The war of words over Scottish independence is heating up. First Minister Alex Salmond has today hit back at claims that an independent Scotland wouldn't be able to keep the pound. Last week, the British Chancellor George Osborne said that Scotland couldn't keep the currency if it voted yes in September's referendum to break away from the rest of the world. Mr Salmond has now accused the government of bullying tactics.
No one with a semblance of understanding of Scottish history and indeed the Scottish character would have made a speech such as the one the Chancellor delivered last week. To be told that we had no rights to assets jointly built up is as insulting as it is demeaning. To be told there are things we can't do will certainly elicit a Scottish response that is as resolute as it is uncomfortable to the No campaign. It is yes we can.
Alex Salmond speaking there. Well, let's talk to Brian Quinn, Scottish economist and former Deputy Governor of the Bank of England. Also in the studio with me, David Marsh, Chairman of the Official Monetary and Financial Institutions Forum. Thank you for coming in, gentlemen. Brian, yes we can. Does it make economic sense or not?
Anything can. The question is, what price do you have to pay? What risks do you have to run to make it work effectively? And I think it's right that the issues involved in the various options and how Scotland manages itself from the point of view of the money that's used, it's right that those issues should be fully explored before people cast their vote. Oh, right. So, you know, it is possible, it is viable, but what are the potential problems? Well, the problem with the variance is if you're trying to establish your own currency as a substitute for the English pound at the moment, British pound at the moment, then of course you run into huge costs, lots of delays, lots of questions which will take, I think, years and years to resolve. It's certainly not an easy option, that particular one. The other option which has been discussed and will be explored further now is whether the pound will still be usable in Scotland, but it will be not authorised, so to say. They'll be you doing the so-called dollarisation of the pound, just as Panama uses the US dollar, Montenegro uses the euro. Scotland could use the pound, but that carries even bigger risks in my view. And David, when you think that, what, 90% of Scotland's trade is with the UK, I mean, what are the risks as far as you are concerned?
Well, it would make a lot of sense for any new currency to have some peg with the English pound. But like Brian, I feel that all this should have been thought of a long time ago. It's all very well to want independence, and heaven knows the Scottish people deserve it in many cases, but then they need to think it all through. The story of the euro over the last 15 years has been it's very difficult to have a currency union without some measure of political union. In fact, the architects of monetary union in Europe knew that all along. They always said that. Chancellor Cole back in 1991. Here we have Alex Salmond apparently doing the opposite. He wants to sever the political union, carry on with the currency union as though nothing had happened. It just doesn't seem very logical or very sensible. I, like Brian, I'm completely neutral in all this, but I just think if you're trying to do something which is really quite epical, breaking up something which has been around for 300 years, you need to think it through. And he seems to give me the impression he's making it up as he goes along. I think it's a bit silly just blaming George Osborne or anybody else like that as the deliverer of bad tidings. Basically, he should have better responses already. And if I was advising him, I'd say, look through it all, think of all the plan B, the plan C, the plan D, setting up a currency board, you know, learn lessons from Hong Kong, learn lessons from the breakup of the Czech Republic and Slovakia. Don't look so much under pressure. If he wants to be a sovereign country, he has to have better answers than that. And Brian, what about the risk of sort of speculators coming here as well and capital flight? Is that something that the UK would ultimately be liable for in terms of bailing out Scotland? Well, there is a risk that if the uncertainties become too great, if any negotiations are conducted in what I would regard as an acrimonious environment, then of course foreign investors will take notice of that and could move. I think the greater risk must be for Scotland if they're going in a different direction from the direction that underpins the current currency in the UK, a Scottish currency or pegged, then I think international investors will look even more closely as to whether they should continue to invest in that part of the UK that's currently called Scotland or not.
David, Alex Salmond has sort of dismissed the Spanish objections, and José Manuel Barroso was on the BBC yesterday saying that, you know, it would be very difficult for them to join the EU independently. Is that the case? I mean, is Alex Salmond right to glibly dismiss something like that?
Well, that is, of course, another issue about whether Scotland, irrespective of what currency regime it has, whether it could remain a member of the EU. I think we've known for years that it would not be automatic that Scotland, having left the UK, would then join the EU just overnight, because the precedent is really East Germany, when that became a member of the European Union after it be joined up with West Germany. But that was quite different. That was a constitutional necessity, that it was going to become part of a greater German state. We're now talking about doing the other way around. We're turning an omelette back into eggs, whereas with the Germans it was really eggs into omelettes. And so everybody's known for years that it's going to be very, very difficult legally, constitutionally, to turn an independent Scotland overnight into a member of the EU. So I think what Barroso was saying yesterday was absolutely straightforward. He was also saying he thinks it's pretty unlikely that the member states would agree this. They have to agree with unanimity. The Spanish have been quite polite lately in what they've been saying, but I think that's actually political correctness. It's quite clear that the Spanish don't want to give any sort of encouragement to Catalan people who want to become sovereign and independent. So I think it's absolutely a statement of the obvious. It would be extremely difficult for Scotland to become a member of the European Union without a very long interim period. And it gives you the impression that Scotland might be a kind of limbo land, you know, like a kind of failed state, swinging somewhere out there in the North Sea between Iceland and Norway and England and Ireland. And this is not helpful from the point of view of the Scottish economy or the Scottish banks or the Scottish people.
I don't think Alex Salmond would ever think of himself as a fail-safe swinging around into the North Sea, but on that lovely image, I think we must end it there. Thank you very much indeed, David Marsh and Brian Quinn.